Juror, are you there? It's Evan and Tiki here on the Fan. Evan still figuring out what the heck he's doing as an alternate juror. Tiki Barber is here. Thanks to BT and Sal doing a little extra hour. We're coming to you a little hour later as we figure things out. Tiki having a nice afternoon with some awards presenting.
Right. We'll talk about this a little bit later. The Gracies presented by the Alliance for Women in Media. Susan Waldman achieving their Lifetime Achievement Award. She was fantastic. And I told her after she gave her presentation, Susan, I can't wait to talk about you on our show today. But we'll get to that later.
We will get to that later. And look, a tale of two teams, a big series about to start in the Bronx tonight. Of course, last night, a big series for the Metsies down in Queens, and they have already now established that a team with the name Ets as their last three letters can, in fact, score 2 touchdowns on a given night as they take care of the Texas Rangers.
Oh, that's a shot.
Yeah.
That's a big shot.
Last night, anybody can quarterback, I guess, and score 14 points. And Grimace might be receiving his Lifetime Achievement Award.
Stop with the Grimace stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not Grimace. It's J.D. Martinez.
Yeah, that's right.
It's Francisco Alvarez. It's Francisco Lindor, who's been fantastic. Couple of 4-hit games over the last, month or so.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you got to give the dudes credit for the credit that they deserve. That's what it comes down to with the Mets.
No doubt about it. And this, as they continue in Texas, if last night was the start of things to come, I don't expect them to continue to score 14 runs in each of these games. I think we tend to forget these are the World Series champion Texas Rangers. So a nice big start to a big series. When Evan joins us, we'll get way more into the Mets, and we'll continue to take your calls on them as we have throughout the day on the Fan at 888-808-1019. But I do want to shift a little bit to the New York Yankees ahead of this series with the Baltimore Orioles. And fortunately, with the Yankees, have had our taste of big series, right? We saw the Dodgers a couple weeks ago. This past weekend, the Boston Red Sox, our first taste of that rivalry, and it wasn't so great an ending for the Yankees. But now we can come to Baltimore Orioles, and we got the news yesterday that Garrett Cole will be starting tomorrow's game, his first start.
Yep.
And we get the news today that the Yankees are calling up Ben Rice, their 25-year-old prospect, number 12 prospect in their organization, a guy who's hit .333 between AA and AAA this year, 15 home runs so far across the minors. And the Yankees' solution to Anthony Rizzo, who we also found out 4 to 6 weeks at a minimum, is to call up a kid rather than just hand a job to a struggling DJ LeMahieu, and I am giddy.
Well, I mean, you have to be, because we don't know a ton about Ben Rice on the MLB level. Obviously, he hasn't been up yet, but his journey is interesting, right? Because he's a smart kid. He's a Dartmouth kid.
Dartmouth, yeah.
Right? I was just doing some research, his background, but his 2021 season got wiped out because of COVID.
Yep.
So he didn't play a lot of baseball. And so you look at this young prospect, and you're like, oh, he's 25 years old already? Like, what's going on here?
The age throws you off.
It throws you off a little bit because you feel like he's new, but he's not. He just hasn't had a ton of experience. But last season, you look at his slashing numbers, and it was ridiculous. His OPS was over 1,000 over 3 levels. So he finally made it up to AAA, and it almost feels by necessity that they're bringing Ben Rice up. But I also think it's because he might be figuring it out.
Yeah.
And instead of... And I think the reason you can do this, what you just mentioned, Sean, you can bring up a kid as opposed to let's throw the veteran who might be struggling in there, is because they've been so good.
Yeah.
Right? If they needed a veteran to come in and change the aura of the clubhouse, Ben Rice wouldn't be coming up. It's because Soto's been so good and Judge has been so good, and the pitching staff has been so good. They don't necessarily need a veteran. They have the luxury of going to a young kid. So it's a huge opportunity for him, and I'm excited to see what he can do, because maybe he is a long-term replacement for Anthony Rizzo.
And maybe he's not, but either way I want to find out. And I think this call-up is multi-layered here, Tiki, and I'll just start at the very base level. The one thing we've pounded home in the negatives, and this obviously is a story for the offseason, is the idea that Hal Steinbrenner keeps preaching that you don't need a $300 million payroll to win a World Series. And while the quick punchback on that would be, well, does this mean the Yankees aren't going to sign Juan Soto? I never believed that that's what it meant, but I did believe that the Yankees are going to have a different organizational approach, whereas if they sign Soto, guess what? That's all you're getting.
Yeah.
And we've seen the likes of Clark Schmidt, now Luis Heel come up, and that's, really helps solidify a rotation, and that's good. Good young prospects. They haven't traded Peraza. Hopefully we see him. Maybe we see him at second base if and when they decide that Glaber is no longer a Yankee in the offseason. But Volpe coming up last year was big. In the past, when it was the baby bombers with Aaron Judge and Gary Sanchez, some prospects haven't worked out. Rob Refsnyder to Boston. But every time the Yankees do call up a prospect, like Dominguez last year, there's just an infusement of energy.
Right.
And the baseball season's long, Tiki, 162 games. Right now, the season could have been hitting a little stalemate after those 2 losses to Boston. This feels like a good, perfect time for an infusement of energy.
The only pushback you'd have on this is if they are going through whatever this little swoon is, this early summer swoon, the last thing you want is a young kid to come in, having to play too, right? Because it's not like Rizzo's just taking a siesta. Right. Rizzo's unavailable. Right. Who knows how long that ulna cap, whatever the heck it is broken bone at near the elbow, which has got to be immobilized, and likely in the month or so that he's going to be out. He's going to lose some muscles density. It's atrophy. Like who knows when he's going to feel right again. Which
is why, spoiler alert, 4 to 6 weeks with a bone that needs to heal, it will be longer than that by the time he gets back in the baseball shape.
Of course it will, because he's got to now start throwing again and hitting again and being an athlete again. Now, you can stay physically in shape, but I think that's less important in baseball. But my point is, if the Yankees are going to be stuck in this mired little slump, I mean, do you really want a young kid to come in and be your, lift me up? Right? And it's just a tough situation to put him in. And when you think about where Ben Rice has been, which has not been in the major leagues a lot, right? He's coming into a series that's like, this is the series.
Yeah.
Right? They already lost right. They already lost 3 of 4 to the Baltimore Orioles earlier on in the season. I think that was beginning of May, or end of April and the beginning of May. So, this is their rival. This is who they're competing against, and they're only up by 3 games on them. And so Ben Rice all of a sudden is in a high-leverage situation, playing first base where he's got to have good defense as well as try to hit a little bit to get the Yanks out of this little mired, I won't call it a slump because they're still too good, but they lose the series to the Dodgers. They lose the series to the Red Sox. It feels like they need something, and I don't know if Ben Rice is equipped because of his age to be that guy.
I think he could be. I think he's going to hit. You see this a lot of times with prospects. It takes the pitchers a little bit of a go-around to figure a guy out. So I think in the immediate, I think we are going to get Ben Rice maybe thumping a couple homers and the crowd going nuts and becoming a fan favorite. It's going to be whether that becomes sustained or not. And this isn't new in Yankee lore. I know obviously last year everybody's going to point to Dominguez, but the season was buried. This is different. This is getting thrown into a big series.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
Right during the thick of the Yankee dynasty. I remember a name, Shane Spencer, comes up, and they called him the home run dispenser. It was Sterling's call, and he hit 1 million home runs. His career didn't pan out, but for that stretch, he was unbelievable. And, before that, when Gary Sanchez made his run to a Rookie of the Year and came up midway through a year, there is at least that track record. Cano and Chin-Ming Wang, the one year they came up, where it just breathes that fresh air into a team. So, look, regardless, we have a little more than a month until the trade deadline?
Yep, 30th.
And you don't want to say that an injury is a good thing, because it's not. Anthony Rizzo is still like a lifeblood core member of that locker room.
Right.
It's very sad to see him go down like this. But if he was going to go down, I sure as heck would like to know for a month what Ben Rice is before then figuring out whether he is the answer for the rest of this team with World Series aspirations or whether they want to make a trade. So an injury is never good to have, but timing-wise, this is the perfect amount of time for Ben Rice to figure this out. And I'm frankly happy the Yankees are wasting no time in playing no games with LeMahieu at first. Get him right in here versus Baltimore.
Yeah, his splits have not been great against lefties. Obviously, he's a lefty hitter, so he hasn't hit well against lefties, and it's not going to get easier hitting on the major league level. Luckily, in Game 1, Suarez is a righty, so he's fine in Game 1. Game 2, I think Povich is actually a lefty. I'd have to go double check that, but so either way, he's going to be put in a position to hopefully succeed in Game 1, which is tonight. Now, if he doesn't, then all of a sudden the questions are going to start coming. Like, what do we do instead? And I don't mean tonight. I mean, he could go 0 for tonight, and we'd forgive it because it's his first time up this season. But if this doesn't work, then what happens? Right. Because the reality for the Yankees is this feels like a must-win. And I don't mean win championship, but at least get to the World Series or around that, deep into the postseason type season. And the last thing you need is guys who are figuring it out. I feel like last year you could get away with it.
Oh, you can't
reason,
this year. Yeah.
Right? Last year, you got away with Anthony Volpe and Peraza and even Oswaldo Cabrera for some of those stretches. Just figuring it out, right? They didn't need to be counted on. This year, you need somebody who can be counted on. And so if this Ben Rice experiment in the short term doesn't work out, they've got a month and about 10 days to truly figure out a solution.
Yep.
Because it feels like they need one at first base. Now, this is to knock what Rizzo means in the clubhouse, but it's what Rizzo hasn't done with his bat that needs to be addressed.
Which is why Ben Rice is also being put in a good situation of there's always pressure coming up, being a rookie, New York Yankees, and coming up, but light pressure in terms of from a fan base. Look, I'm speaking of this as a Yankee fan here. Anthony Rizzo has not been the Anthony Rizzo of old. That's putting things lightly in an understatement. Him going on the IL and the alternative on the roster right now being DJ LeMahieu, who has struggled back from injury. To me, it's not as if this is like we were scared about 2 weeks ago, Juan Soto going down and calling up a kid. Now it would have been Dominguez, but calling up somebody to replace Juan Soto. You're replacing a position right now that, frankly, was getting as little production as anywhere on the roster.
Right.
So, whatever Ben Rice goes through, if it is struggles, it can't be much worse than what the Yankees had anyway. So I think that basically you can only look through the prism of positivity. They use the power of positivity that Loogie's used with the Mets and feel good about this. I do think he will hit. Now, what Yankee fans are going to hate, if you dig deeper past the slugging percentage, batting average, and the home runs he's hit, he does strike out a bunch. That'll look similar to some of the Yankees of old.
Yep.
But you're going to have to take the bad with the good. Bottom line is this. Whatever Hal Steinbrenner's approach is on whether they need to buy at the deadline or not, the idea that organizationally they are going to reward a kid like this at 25 years old and give him a chance, I think that the risk is worth the reward, and I think the energy could be there. And dare I say, it's a cheap way to acquire exactly what the Yankees are going to be needing at the deadline. You just hope he prevails.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I think Hal's just got to hope it works.
Of course. We all do.
Because he's starting to speak about the constraints, the financial constraints. Nobody wants to hear it, right? Nobody with ticket prices the way that they are, the concession.
No.
Right? Nobody wants to hear, we don't have the money or it's unsustainable for us to do this.
I'm going Friday night, Zeke. How much do you think I'm going to drop on beers?
Right, exactly.
Right.
Exactly right. You're $100 or $200 out of your pocket on the weekend. So the reality for Hal is that he needs this to work. Now, obviously, if Ben Rice doesn't quite work out early, because he's still young, right? You don't want to crush him and say he has no chance if things go a little bit awry over the next few days. But if things don't work out, I do think that Hal will spend the money, but Ben Rice can save him from spending the money. It's almost like, man, just do me a favor, kid, and be good. That's what it feels like when you think about how Ben Rice is being utilized, bringing a young kid up from the Yankee farm system, as opposed to going to look for a potential available arm at the trade deadline or before the trade deadline, since we're still a month and some change away.
Or like you just said, a veteran arm, not having to focus on first base, regardless if they do something at the deadline, to be able to check that box. So Yankees-Orioles tonight. Yankee fans, little temperature check. You excited? Does Ben Rice add a little juice for you? The different Yankee approach. They've had some luck calling up kids when they have in recent memory. 888-808-1019. Let's get it started right now with Corey and Manalapan. Corey, what's up? You're on the Fan.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I just got to listen. I understand about the kid Rice, and I understand that he's been doing it in the minors. My own thinking is, do we not think that we should be looking for maybe veteran help? And I don't know if there's anybody out there, to be honest with you. I know, listen, I mean, I mentioned it to somebody, my brother actually, and I mentioned about Jose Abreu, and he said, no, you can't.
No, that's worse than Rizzo.
Right. You can't get these. You gotta try something new. But my thought is, listen, if you look around, I don't like Gleyber Torres, and I'm probably not going to like him if he's still here by the end of the year. But what are you going to do? You have certain guys that just listen. Again, I'll go back to one more, and I'll let you hear what you have to say. But listen, Gleyber Torres, bases loaded. What were you swinging at? What were you doing?
Corey, you're right. Corey, you're right, but we got to turn the page here. It's been a day. We got the Orioles tonight. It was a bad loss on Sunday night, frustrating. Casas killed us with that story. We got to turn the page. Yes, Gleyber Torres is infuriating, but this is about, picking things up, a nice kid to infuse a little energy.
And when he's talking about veterans, I mean, there are a few, but not a ton. I mean, the guy across the town is the one that everybody wants to talk about, Pete Alonso, but I mean, the Mets are finally starting to play.
And that's it, Tiki.
Right? They got 6 in a row. If you're the Mets at this point, you're not saying, all right, Pete, you're expendable. Go there for a year, maybe come back. But would that make sense for the Yankees? Sure. Does it make sense for the Mets? Probably not.
That's exactly
because
Tiki.
Not only does it kind of undercut what they've started to do with these 6 straight wins, but it also probably pisses Pete off. You know what I mean? It's just like you're using me as a tool. As opposed to believing in me as a player.
And I want to track him coming back, but you just hit on it. Forget that with Pete Alonso, whether it's going to piss him off or not. Tiki, are the Mets in a playoff race now? We did a whole show on it yesterday in the whole station.
They're a game out right now.
Okay, right.
From the wild card.
Right, and how could you not, after a win like last night, continue to believe in that?
Right, they win 2 more or 3 more games over the next next series and a half. I mean, they're in the playoffs.
Okay, so if that's how you feel, and that's how most people around here feel.
Right.
Now think about this from a Yankee deadline. How many teams will be out of it in a month? 5?
Right.
So how many of those have first basemen that will be expendable to the Yankees? The expanded wild card and all of that, it only lessens the pool of what you need at the deadline.
It does. And the other name that's out there, obviously, has been mentioned a couple of times, is Vlad Guerrero. There's no way that's happened.
No, in division?
Exactly.
You're going to have to pay the Yankee tax for sure on that.
Right. And so it's no way that's happening. So there aren't a ton of options. So I know people want to, talk about the available first baseman, the veterans that are, but who?
Right.
And it's like who?
And if you have to make a trade for that, guess what? Ben Rice better hit because he'd have to be somebody included in it anyway. So it's chicken and the egg. Cliff in the Bronx. Cliff, what's up?
3 quick things. One, Rice should probably platoon him. To your point, if he doesn't hit lefties,
yes.
Well, let LeMahieu get swing, so they'll probably platoon him. 2, the greatest cliche in baseball, a team is never as good as when they're playing good and never as bad as when they're playing bad.
Yes.
And 3,
thanks,
how about a 5 at 5? 5 best reasons Tiki should be in the Hall of Fame.
Hey, one of these days.
Wow.
One of these days.
You should be, Tiki. No doubt you should be. I did find it unusual that Cliff used Ben Rice to make that point. But
hey, if Cliff needs to use Ben Rice to promote or try to espouse me being in the Hall of Fame, by all means. You can use Gleyber Torres. You can use Aaron Judge. You can use Juan Soto. Whoever you want to.
Yeah, I think we should not mention the Giants' 100-year anniversary again without mentioning that Tiki Barber should be the next Giant in the Hall of Fame.
Thank you.
All right. Jack in Brooklyn. Jack, what's your Ben Rice point? What's your Tiki Hall of Fame point?
No Tiki point, but my Ben Rice point is newish fan, super excited to see Ben Rice come up. It's worked for us in the past with Anthony Volpe, with Oswaldo Cabrera. Yes, I understand it might take him some time to make that transition, but it's the future of the franchise, especially with Olaf Steinbrenner saying about next year not being able to make a big annual salary, and Rizzo's just not going to be the guy anymore. Well, he just isn't. Ever since the concussion.
Right. Well, again, I don't like maligning Anthony Rizzo because I do think he has a role.
I agree.
There's a reason that the Yankees acquired him 3 years ago, whatever it was, and part of it was for his ability, obviously, and defense and first base, but it was also because he's just a vet who's had success.
Yeah, and they elected to sign him for 2 years rather than give Freddie Freeman 7 years.
Yes.
So they were aware that the end could be coming for Rizzo anyway.
Right, but there's more to it than just he's not someone I just want to get rid of because he's not performing or not playing well right now. And so there's a value in bringing up the young kids, obviously, but I think there's a value to Rizzo's being on this team too, even if it doesn't fully get back to who he was a couple of years ago.
Yankee fans, Ben Rice era. How long will it last? Well, it begins tonight. We'll continue to take your calls on that. And the Grimace Mets scoring 2 touchdowns last night. Sean, it's Tiki. Evan will join us at some point from jury duty, and I'm sure you'll get plenty from him and the Met Cowboy judge and whatever circus sitcom courthouse he's in.
The defense is wrong.
Your calls at 888-808-1019. We're coming to you live from the Town Fair Tire Studios, powered by Town Fair Tire.